Hello and welcome back to the Grave Chroniclers. Tonight we descend into the North Sea, into a world of crushing pressure and borrowed air, where men lived for weeks inside steel cylinders smaller than most people's living rooms, doing one of the most dangerous jobs ever devised. Tonight we're talking about a disaster that made no sound the outside world could hear. No tower of flame, no headline explosion. Just 5 men, one opened clamp, and a fraction of a second that the diving industry has never forgotten. Get comfortable, let's begin. There are places on this earth where human beings were never supposed to survive. The bottom of the ocean is one of them. Not the romantic ocean of documentaries and coral reefs and shafts of filtered sunlight. The real ocean. The deep one. Black and cold and crushing. The one that does not care whether you are brave or skilled, or whether anyone is waiting for you at home. And yet, in the early 1980s, men went down there every day. Not in submarines, not in observation vessels with thick glass and robot arms. They went in their own bodies, in wetsuits, breathing borrowed air, working with their hands at depths that would kill an unprotected person before they even had time to understand what was killing them. The North Sea in this era was a machine that ran on danger. Vast reserves of oil and gas had been discovered beneath its floor, and the companies that wanted to reach those reserves needed human beings to go down and do what machines could not yet do. So they built a system. A strange, brilliant, claustrophobic system that allowed men to live at depth for weeks at a time without surfacing. They called it saturation diving. Here is how it works. The moment a diver descends, pressure forces dissolved gases into their tissues and blood. That is fine on the way down. The problem comes on the way back up. Ascend too fast, and those gases bubble out inside you, the way carbonation explodes out of a shaken bottle when you crack the lid. Bubbles in your joints, bubbles in your spinal cord, bubbles in your brain. The condition is called decompression sickness, and in its worst form it does not just hurt you, it kills you. Saturation diving sidesteps this by removing the ascent entirely. Divers live on the surface vessel inside pressurized steel chambers, their bodies kept at the same crushing pressure as the seafloor they are working on. They eat in there. They sleep in there. They play cards, argue, stare at the walls, dream about dry land. Their voices rise to a strange, helium-tinged squeak. They step outside only to climb into a diving bell, which carries them straight down to the worksite and straight back up, never breaking the pressure seal. When the job is done, the pressure inside the chambers is reduced with painstaking slowness, coaxing the dissolved gases out at a rate their bodies can tolerate. It is not a glamorous existence, but it works. And in the Frigg gas field, straddling the maritime border between Norway and the United Kingdom, it was happening every day. The Byford Dolphin was a semi-submersible drilling rig. On the 1st of November, 1983, 4 divers were finishing a saturation dive. Their names were Edwin, Roy Lucas, Bjørn Bergersen, and Truls Hellevik. They had done their work. They had come back up. Their diving bell had been remated with the pressurized chamber system on the surface. 2 dive tenders, the men who operated the system from outside, were overseeing the final stages. Their names were William Crammond and Martin Saunders. The pressure inside the saturation system at that moment stood at 9 atmospheres. 9 times the weight of the air pressing down on you right now, contained inside a network of steel tubes and chambers with 4 living men breathing inside. The divers were safely back. The long, slow process of bringing them home was about to begin. William Crammond opened the clamp on the trunk connector. It is not known precisely why. Investigators would spend years attempting to reconstruct the decisions and miscommunications that led to that moment. What they could not reconstruct was the moment itself, because the moment itself lasted less than a second. The connector opened, the pressure seal broke, 9 atmospheres of compressed gas stopped being held. What followed was not an explosion in the way most people picture explosions. No fireball, no visible shockwave. What happened was something almost more terrible in its quietness. A pressure equalization so violent and so instantaneous that the human mind has almost no vocabulary for it. 9 atmospheres to 1, in a fraction of a second. William Crammond was standing at the clamp. The force that moved through him did not give him time to feel it. Martin Saunders was thrown across the deck and survived, broken and traumatized, but alive. Inside the chamber, the 4 divers died. Decompression that should have taken days happened in less than a heartbeat. 3 of the 4 men, Edwin Coward, Roy Lucas, and Bjørn Bergersen, died inside the chamber. The 4th, Truls Hellevik, was positioned near the open hatch when the pressure released. The escaping gas carried him through it. 5 men, 1 second. And then the North Sea going on exactly as it had before. Gray and cold and indifferent to the silence where those voices used to be. The aftermath was long and ugly. Investigations were opened. Norwegian and British authorities both reached into the wreckage looking for answers. What they found was a tangle of procedural failures and, at the center of that tangle, something that made everything more disturbing. The clamp mechanism itself, the engineering. It was possible, within the design of that system, to open the trunk connector clamp while fully pressurized. There was nothing preventing it. No interlock, no guard. No failsafe that would have made William Crammond's action physically impossible. Whether that constitutes a design flaw, a regulatory failure, or an oversight by the operating company, was argued in courts and corporate offices for over 2 decades. The families were left to wait while that argument ground slowly forward. In 2007, 24 years after the accident, a Norwegian court finally awarded damages. 24 years to acknowledge a loss that happened in less than a second. The diving industry rewrote itself around this accident. The systems used today carry multiple redundant locking mechanisms that make it physically impossible to open a pressurized connector without completing a specific sequence of steps. The procedures are longer, the training more rigorous. The culture carries inside it the memory of what happens when the margin between routine and catastrophe is a single human action at the wrong moment. Edwin Coward, Roy Lucas, Bjørn Bergersen, Truls Hellevik, and William Crammond were not adventurers seeking glory. They were workers. Men doing a particular job, the same job they had done many times before, on a Tuesday in November in the gray and freezing North Sea. And the system around them failed them. That is the thing that does not let go. Not the physics, not the legal history. The ordinariness of a workday and the absolute, instantaneous way it ended. Somewhere beneath the surface of that same sea, the work still goes on. Divers still pressurize. Bells still descend. The dark is still the same dark. And every clamp, every checklist, every redundant lock exists because of 5 men who went to work and did not come home. That is how the dead teach the living. Not with speeches, not with monuments. With the second lock. With the safeguard that wasn't there before. With the rule that now says you cannot do that, not ever, because we learned what happens when you do. And we learned it once. If this story stayed with you, it should. The names Edwin Coward, Roy Lucas, Bjørn Bergersen, Truls Hellevik, and William Crammond deserve to be remembered. And the best way you can help make sure they are is to share this video with someone who's never heard of the Byford Dolphin. If you're new here, subscribe, because we do this every week. We find the stories history tried to bury, and we drag them back into the light. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And maybe spare a thought for the people doing the jobs you'll never have to do.